Okay, so let me first introduce the speaker, Gajendra Deshpande, and he holds a Master of Technology in Computer Science and Engineering and postgraduate diploma in Cyber Law and Cyber Forensic from the National Law School of India University. And our speaker um, present in many prestigious conferences in PyCon in the Asia and beyond, and also he's a very active member locally in the Python community. And today's topic is about securing Django applications, because Django is the most popular Python-based web framework used to create web applications. And so obviously you have to put it on the web, on the internet, and so security is very important. So may I now invite the speaker to come and present. Let me see.
Audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think we can hear you clearly.
Thank you, doctor, for the introduction. I thank Open Source Hong Kong and the PyCon community of Hong Kong for giving me an opportunity to speak at PyCon Hong Kong 2021. So in today's topic, I'm going to give you the overview of securing Django applications. So in today's talk, we will be discussing in brief security aspects of Django web applications and how we can perform basic penetration testing of Django web applications. Then overview of OWASP top 10 risks. Then we will discuss two important utilities, important tools. One is Django Hunter and Django Code, and strategies and configuration settings to make Django applications secure. Of course, we will not be discussing these topics in a sequence. We will take one OWASP risk and we will discuss the associated solution with the OWASP risk. So let us first look at the tool called as djcheckup.com. So it's a very useful website. So using this website, you can check, are there any vulnerabilities present in your Django web application? So generally Django web applications are hosted online. So you need to just mention the URL of your Django website and click on run a checkup on my site button. So when you click, you will receive a report like this. If there are issues, then it says that there is some room for improvement, and they usually suggest the recommendations. Okay, so these are related to OWASP top 10 risks. So you can see here that it says that debug is not enabled. So whenever you see thumbs up symbol, thumbs up icon, that means that has been taken care. If you see thumbs down signal, then you need to address that issue. So basically here, most of the things are thumbs up. So there are no issues with that application. But if there are some issues, then basically you will see a thumbs down icon in a red color. So you need to address that issue. Now, whenever you create a Django application, you are going to create some files like this. So you will find that there are some basic files which are created. And one of the basic file, and which is very important, is the settings.py file. Okay, now you can observe here that we have put two statements in a red block. So first one is the secret key. So you need to keep the secret key always secret. You should not share it with others, especially when you go for production of the application. Production of the application means, or production environment is nothing but the application where you are going to host and the client or people will start using it. Then next is you need to set debug equal to false. It is very, very important. So if you set debug equal to true, then you will, or the hackers will start seeing the error messages. So error messages usually reveal some information related to the system. So that can be used to carry out the further attacks. So you need to set debug equal to false. Now, these are the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. So OWASP is a non-profit organization and it stands for Open Web Application Security Project. So they basically define top 10 vulnerabilities. So these top 10 vulnerabilities include injection attacks, then broken authentication, sensitive data exposure, XML external entities, broken access control, security misconfigurations, cross-site scripting, then insecure deserialization, then using components with known vulnerabilities, then finally the insufficient logging and monitoring. Now, if you see these top 10 vulnerabilities, we can group them into certain categories. Say, for example, you need to write the code in such a way that the code is secure. Then you need to use the secure components. Then you need to use sufficient logging and monitoring tools. Okay, so not all vulnerabilities are present in the source code. Many are related to the system configuration or your application configuration, which needs to be set right. Now, the first attack which we are going to discuss is the injection attack. So injection attacks are not just present in SQL or database. They can be present in many places. Say, for example, they can be found in SQL, they can be found in LDAP, XPath, so or even no SQL queries. Then even OS commands, that is operating system commands, can also be injected. Then XML parsers, SMTP headers, and so on. So basically, SQL injection is a type of attack where malicious user is able to execute arbitrary SQL code on a database. So this can result in records being deleted or data leakage. So basically, it results into data loss, corruption of the data, or even the disclosure of information to unauthorized parties. Now, how it is done is you can see here two sentences which are written in red color. So the first one is says that string query is equal to select star from accounts where customer ID is equal to request.get parameter of whatever ID you pass. But that's that's in the backend. Now, to access the particular URL, you are going to type the URL. So how are you going to type the URL? It's http example.com/app/account view. Then after that, you are going to mention ID. So generally this ID is taken automatically from the database. But here what attacker is trying to do is here attacker is trying to add or append malicious input. So you can see here some Boolean operators have been used, that is or. Then it says that 1 equal to 1. So in this case, how it works is whatever may be the left hand side query, irrespective of that, it's going to reveal the information. Of course, this is a very simple example. You need actually very good attack vector here. Okay. Then there are two functions. One is extra and second one is raw SQL, which enable the developer to write custom queries in Django. So which can be the source of again injection in Django. Now, how you can protect yourself or your application from SQL injection attack? So first one is go for query parameterization, and by default, Django supports query parameterization. So one more important point which I would like to tell here is that by default, these frameworks are secure. You take Django, Flask, or even Plone, or even maybe WordPress or Joomla, even those things, they are by default secure. But the problem is when you customize it, when you add the third party plugin, when you add the third party component, or when you use third party themes, at that point of time your application becomes vulnerable. Then whenever you are using extra raw SQL, you have to use it with caution because it allows you to write custom queries and it's a risk here. and use positive or whitelist server-side input validation. So it may not be the complete defense, but you are only allowing known accounts to access the uh, user accounts, or say dashboard or a admin account. The next is the broken authentication. Now we know that attackers have access to hundreds of millions of valid username and password combinations for credential stuffing, default administrative account lists, automated brute force, and even dictionary attack tools. Now what happens here is they get such data in the dark web. They just pay some money and buy this data. But generally, you need not, or the attacker need not have to have access to all these hundreds of accounts. They just need to gain the access to only few accounts. So those few accounts include admin or super admin account. So when they get access to the admin or super admin account, they can easily compromise the system. Okay, so that's a problem. So they aim at gaining access to the super admin account. And most authentication attacks occur due to the continued use of passwords as a sole factor. So there are some solutions which we will discuss in the next slide. Then application session timeouts aren't set properly. Okay, so if application session timeout is not set, or if it is set for a longer duration, then again your application becomes vulnerable. So what are the solutions? The solution is, wherever possible, implement multi-factor authentication to prevent automated credential stuffing, brute force, or stolen credential reuse attacks. So here you can go for two-factor authentication, or you can also go for single sign-on options. Then do not ship or deploy with any default credentials, particularly for admin users. That is because most of the users, they don't have a tendency to change the password. So they will go with default password only. Then you can implement weak password checks, such as testing a new or unchanged password against a list of the top 10,000 worst passwords. Then whatever password length you set, it should be according to the NIST standard 863B guidelines. Then limit or increasingly delay failed login attempts. So if there are more than 3 failed login attempts, you can block the entire application for certain duration of time, so that you can block the bots. Then use a server-side secure built-in session manager that generates a new random session ID each time. Then in Django, you can use these 3 modules. So one is one-time passwords for Django. Then second one is two-factor authentication for Django. Then third one is Django user management. So with these 3 packages, you can handle broken authentication problem in Django. So the URLs have been mentioned. So you can visit these URLs, and you can check how you can use these different packages in your application in order to make your application secure. The next is sensitive data exposure. So rather than directly attacking crypto, attackers steal keys, they execute man-in-the-middle attacks, or steal clear text data of the server, so while in transit, or from the user's client, for example, the browser. So here the manual attack is generally required. Now we know that an application encrypts credit card numbers in a database using automatic database encryption, right? And also we know that if a site doesn't use or enforce TLS or HTTPS, that is HTTP secure protocol, for all pages, then it's a problem. Or even choosing a weak encryption method is a problem. Okay. And also the password database uses unsalted or simple hashes to store everyone's password. So using that, you can easily recover. Now the solutions are, we know that your data is encrypted and sent over the network, but when you are processing the data, it will be decrypted at the client's machine. But what if the client's machine is compromised, right? What if already it is waiting for the data to be decrypted? So in that case, as soon as you decrypt the data, your data will be accessible to malwares and spywares and so on. Okay, so the solution here is you can go for advancements in the cryptography. That is, you can go for homomorphic encryption techniques, which basically computes, which basically performs computation over encrypted data. So you need not have to decrypt the data. Okay, you can perform computations without decrypting the data. Then some more solutions are like classify data processed or stored or transmitted by an application, which is identify which data is sensitive according to the privacy laws, regulatory requirements, or business needs. Then apply controls as per the classification. That is, don't make all data available to all users. Then don't store sensitive data unnecessarily. Okay, so discard it as soon as possible, or use PCI DSS compliant tokenization or even truncation. Then make sure to encrypt all sensitive data at rest. Then encrypt all data in transit, that is enable HTTP strict transport security, that is HSTS. Then disable caching for response that contains sensitive data. Then verify independently the effectiveness of the configuration and settings. Now, if you are going for production of a Django application, you will find a file called as production.py file. In that file, you need to make these settings. You need to set host scheme as HTTPS, right? Then you need to forward all the requests to HTTPS, right? Then set most of these things to true, because these are all related to security settings. The next is if you want to use more modules, that is, you need encryption modules, cryptography modules for hashing. In that case, you can use Django encrypted model fields, right, for Python cryptography. Then also you can go for Django cryptography modules, right, for encryption and decryption and other cryptography related tasks. Then you can also go for Django Fernet fields. So depending on the requirement, you can choose the appropriate package. The next is XML external entities. Now attackers can exploit vulnerable XML processors if they can upload XML or include hostile content in an XML document, exploiting vulnerable code, dependencies, or integrations. So these flaws can be used to extract data, execute a remote request from the server, scan internal systems, perform a denial of service attack, as well as execute other attacks. Now, one thing which you need to remember, you need to consider here is that XML is a very important technology. You take any modern application, XML will be there. XML will be part of that application. Of course, now JSON is replacing XML at many places, and whenever possible, you should consider replacing XML with JSON. Now we know that XML allows us to create our own elements, that is tags, attributes, and entities, right? So if you have worked with HTML, then you know what are HTML character entities. So if you want to print special symbols on the web page, say for example, if you want to print copyright symbol or a trademark symbol or even a currency symbol, right, which is generally not present on our keyboard. So in that case, we can go for these XML entities and print those special characters. Now this is you can see here some examples. So here in the first example, the attacker is attempting to extract the data from the server. So what he is trying to do is he is trying to create an entity called XXC, and he is trying to link it to this file, that is /etc/password. So whenever the person uses the entity ampersand XXC semicolon, so this is the way you should be mentioning the XML entity, and whenever the user or developer mentions it, the attacker will gain access to the file, that is the password file. Then in the second attack, so here attacker is probing the server's private network by changing the entity to a line. So instead of linking it to a password file, now the attacker is linking the entity to a private network. Then next, the attacker is attempting to perform denial of service attack by linking XML entity XXC to a potentially endless file. So the solutions are, whenever possible, use less complex data formats such as JSON. and avoid serialization of the sensitive data. Then disable XML external entity and DTD processing in all XML parsers and the application. So implement positive server-side input validation, and then verify that XML or XSL file upload functionality validates incoming XML using XSD validation or similar tools. So you will find validation tools in your editor, or even you will find these validation tools in online. Okay, say for example, you will get XSL validation tools and even XML validation tools, DTD validation tools. So you can check whether your file or whatever code is written, is it conforming to a XML standard or DTD. So if it is not conforming, then there is some problem. Then you can also use shadow daemon application, which is the collection of tools to detect, record, and block attacks on web applications. So it's a web application firewall, and it is a free software. It supports Python, Django, and Flask, and also PHP and Perl. The next is broken access control. So here the application uses unverified data in a SQL call that is accessing account information. So here some statements are mentioned. So here the variable used is the account, but what attacker is trying to do is he's trying to access the attack information by mentioning the account name, which is not existing. Okay, so that is not verified. So if he is able to get the information without verification of the account, then there is a problem of broken access control. So here the attacker simply forces the browser to target URLs. So admin rights are required for accessing the admin page. So if it is unauthenticated, user can access the either page. So it's a flaw. So if a non-admin can access the admin page, then again it's a flaw. So to protect against broken access control, you need to consider a few points, such as it is only effective if enforced in trusted server-side code or serverless API. Okay. Then disable web server directory listing and ensure that file metadata and backup files are not present with the web routes. Then log access control failures, alert admins when appropriate things happen. Say for example, if there's an attack, then you need to report it to the admin. Then you can also go for Django user management. So using Django user management, you can set various access controls to different users. Say for example, normal user will be having lesser access, whereas intermediate will be having more access, then admin will be having much more access to the applications options. Then next is security misconfiguration. Now note here that this is not related to the coding of the application. Your application may be secure, but if it is not configured properly, if the security options are not set properly, then again your application will become vulnerable. So attackers will often attempt to exploit unpatched flaws or access default accounts, unused pages, unprotected files and directories, etc., to gain unauthorized access or knowledge of the system. Okay. So it can happen at any level of an application stack, including network services platform, web server, application server, frameworks, and so on. Usually automated scanners are useful for detecting misconfigurations. Then application servers comes with a sample applications that are not removed from the production server. Okay, say for example, if you install WordPress, then by default one theme will be installed. So that's a default theme. Then directory listing is not disabled on the server. Then application server's configuration allows detailed error messages such as stack traces to be returned to the users. Then a cloud service provider has default sharing permissions open to the internet by other CSP users. Then the solutions are like Django hardening, then disable directory listing, then use automated scanners, then customize error messages to hide sensitive information. Because if you display the system error messages, then it will reveal the information of the system, such as operating system and so on. The next is the cross-site scripting. The application uses untrusted data in the construction of the following HTML snippet without validation or escaping. So in this case, you can see here that there is some code which is written, that is document.cookie. Okay, so it executes by default and reveals the information such as cookie information or session ID information. Okay, so this needs to be avoided. So how you can avoid is you can use Django templates to protect against the majority of XSS attacks, but there are some exceptions. But when you write the code using HTML, then you cannot escape from that. Then it is also important to be particularly careful when using safe or custom template tags. Then insecure deserialization. So we know that serializations are usually performed. So whenever we are using RPC or IPC communication, then wired protocols, caching or persistence, and so on. So this can be avoided by using only safe architectural patterns, so which does not accept the serialized objects. Then for this you can use or implement integrity checks, and there is a module called as Django JSignature. Then use components with known vulnerabilities, right? So we know that the third party components, we cannot trust them, so but they usually reduce the development effort. Then how we can the security from this is that you have to download the third party components from their official website, then use tools like Shodan or Django Hunter, then perform continuous inventory of the versions of both client side and server side applications, then remove unused dependencies, unnecessary features, components, files, and documentation. And important thing is that keep updating your application. The next is insufficient logging and monitoring. So exploitation of insufficient logging and monitoring is the bedrock of nearly every major incident. So if you don't sufficiently implement logging and monitoring tools, then you will not be able to identify the root cause. So the solution is that implement sufficient logging and monitoring tools. So for that, you can ensure that all login access and failures and server-side input validation failures can be logged. Ensure that logs are generated in a format that can be easily consumed by the centralized log management solutions. Right? Then establish effective monitoring and alert systems such that the suspicious activities are detected and responded in a timely fashion. Okay. Then lastly, I will discuss this tool, that is Django Hunter. It's a tool designed to help identify incorrectly configured Django applications that are exposing sensitive information. Now this is the syntax, how you can use it. It's an open source and you can download it from the mentioned GitHub repository, but you need access to Shodan, but Shodan is not free. You need a Shodan key there. Then you can use, along with this command, Google Docs to identify the problems. The next is Django Board. So it is for those who want to learn penetration testing or security testing related to Django. So it's an intentionally vulnerable Django app. But if you go to OWASP website, then you will find many GOAT applications there. Say for example, for PHP, you will find, for .NET you will find, right? So JavaScript you will find. So they are basically used to train a person for learning security testing. So you can also refer security resources. So these are really good collection of Django security resources. You can mention, you can follow this URL. Then even Django security documentation is really nice. So you can refer it for additional information. I have just given you the overview of OWASP Prop 10 risks and how you can handle them using Django packages. So in summary, since Django is a web framework, it maps to OWASP Prop 10 vulnerabilities. It has built-in modules to build secure web applications. But the security of the application and data is not only the responsibility of the developer, the user is also equally responsible for the security of the data and accounts. Thank you, everyone, for attending my talk. If there are any questions, I can take up those questions.
Yes, any questions? Okay, so maybe I ask one questions.
Sure.
I really appreciate you cover many aspects, and it seems to me that it's very hard to remember all those possibilities. Are there like some easier ways to harden a Django installation?
Okay, so basically you can go to OWASP.org website. So there in detail each vulnerability has been discussed, and the solution is also discussed. So I have not taken much content because it is very difficult to fit everything in a slide, but OWASP.org has got really nice documentation, and also Django security documentation URL I have mentioned. And important thing is that you can also refer that Django goat application. So it's actually really nice resource. For every issue they have taken the source code and the solution. So I think you can follow that, and that will be easier way to understand the things.
Okay, so see if anyone want to use chat. Some people are a bit shy, so some people use chat to ask questions. All right. Maybe I'm not sure. maybe the participant really can take in everything they know. You presented, that is. Okay, so thank you so much. I personally learned quite a number of things. For example, I never knew that you can create some loop some text using XML. Yes, that's quite worrying.
Thank you. So that's a problem in
Yeah.
security, because hackers they use normal things only, but for other
Yep.
purposes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I probably will use more JSON.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Thank
Hope
you.
to see you. Hope you enjoy this conference, and hope to
Sure.
see you in the future, and hope that you can visit Hong Kong.
Sure. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.